So we're on part 7 of my opinions on the female Diksha Guru issue. Again, just my opinions. And today we're going to go over repercussions, particularly the splitting or splintering of ISKCON. A few years ago, not too long ago, maybe 2, 3 years ago, I think it was around the beginning of the pandemic, the issue came up, and one prominent Prabhupada disciple, initiating guru, posted a video on his opinions. He was against it, gave some very interesting reasons as to why. One of the reasons he gave was that the repercussions would be devastating. The repercussions would be irreversible. The repercussions would affect and change ISKCON forever. However, the person, and this is a person for whom I have great respect, he's a wonderful writer and author of wonderful spiritual Krishna conscious literature. But he did not really enumerate what those repercussions would be. So it was hard to understand for me. It was hard to understand exactly what these dire repercussions were or would be if the female Diksha Guru issue was made ISKCON policy. So I agree with him, at least on the fact that the repercussions would be organizationally transformational. ISKCON would never be the same again. It would be irreversible. I believe this is why it's being reversed recently so very quickly. Because if it was allowed to pick up steam, it would be, for sure, irreversible. The face of ISKCON would be changed forever. The face of Krishna consciousness, the face of our society would indeed be changed forever. Not just the face of a society, from top to bottom, the influence of such female Diksha Gurus would have on the society would change the society from top to bottom forever. Those changes, in my opinion, are for the most part and on balance would be, in my opinion, for the good, both for the expansion of ISKCON, the growth of ISKCON, fulfilling the 7 purposes of ISKCON given by Srila Prabhupada. It would be an incredible boost in that regard. It would also be a net benefit internally, in terms of our internal structures, our internal policies, our internal procedures, our internal social structure would benefit. And studies have routinely shown, as I mentioned earlier on in part 1 and part 2, in part 1, the foundation, studies routinely show across the board, across regions, across cultures, across societies, that when women are empowered in an organization, in a group, in a team, in any endeavor, when the women are included and empowered, very important point, empowered, the organization as a whole benefits. It's the science on that has confirmed what Arjuna was saying in the Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning. If women are polluted, if women are mistreated, if women are not empowered, all of society suffers. That statement has been affirmed time and time again. Science has caught up, if you will, to what Arjuna has been saying in the Bhagavad Gita 5,000 years ago. When you add women to the equation and they are empowered, the organization, the group, everyone is benefited. There's a net benefit when that happens. That is not the same when you have men and the men are so-called empowered, if you will. That is not, everyone in the organization does not benefit. It's not the case. So, the repercussions that particular senior devotees was alluding to, well, the senior devotee did not allude to any specific dire repercussions. He simply said it would not be a good thing and it would change ISKCON forever. I think it would be a good thing and it would change ISKCON forever. I think that's, on balance, it would be a net benefit. I always like to say that women and children are the third rail of ISKCON, right? ISKCON doesn't want to address women's and children's issues, but it's women's and children's issues that actually propel the society forward into the future. I liken the other two rails as temples and book distribution, right? Absolutely necessary. Without any of the rails, without any of the three rails, the train simply would not move. It would be disabled. Right? So temples are one rail, book distribution are the other rail, but it is powered by issues pertaining to women and children, the empowerment and the development of women and children, in my opinion. Regarding the splitting of ISKCON, that statement by another Prabhupada disciple, senior devotee whom I personally have respected since I've known him as a child in Gurukul in India, that person brought up the specter of ISKCON splitting over this issue. And I understand why that person, although I was heartbroken to hear, it's the first time I had ever heard, at least myself, it's the first time I had ever heard a senior guru, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, verbally speak out loud in public that ISKCON should split. I mean, it was a recommendation. It wasn't just an observation that it could happen. It was an actual recommendation to solve this so-called issue. And I was floored. I was stunned. I understand why he said it from the point of view that because the issue is so divisive and that we're reverting to essentially Vaishnava aparat as we talk about this issue. I mean, it's kind of like wrapping up grenades in Shastra and Prabhupada's quotes and hurling them at the devotees and gleefully reacting when we have scored a hit, so to speak. So the tenor of the discussion, hurling invective back and forth, hurling claims of sexism, misogyny, hurling claims of racism back and forth between the two parties. I understand why that Maharaj said, best to just have an amicable separation, which is the words he used. So I understand from that perspective why he would mention that. I think that talk about splintering and separation of ISKCON should stop. That it's not an option. The splitting of ISKCON is simply not an option. It's it's kind of like the modern idea of divorce. A couple get into an argument and they immediately reach for divorce. It's a limited example because ISKCON was not two different entities that at one point in time came together. Turned out to be incompatible and they have to go their own ways. So the example is flawed because ISKCON, a better example would be the story of, I forget who it was. I think it's the story of Tenali Ram. The Christians have the same version of the story of, who was the wise king in Christian or perhaps Judaism? Two women came to the king arguing over a baby. And the king said, very well, we'll cut the baby in half. You can each have one half of the child. And immediately one of the ladies said, it's not my child, let her have it. Obviously that was the mother, because the mother would rather allow her child to live, even if someone else were raising her child, than to have the dead half of a baby. So that's a more apt example. Split ISKCON in half, and we end up with two dead halves of ISKCON. Two dead halves, even if they physically or externally seem to flourish, they're two dead halves because it goes against the wishes of Srila Prabhupada. No one wins. Neither half of ISKCON wins because it's a direct, disobedient outcome. It's disobeying the instruction of the spiritual master, where that ISKCON should, at all costs, remain together, and the instruction is, you will show how you love me by how you cooperate. That's the instruction. So the option of ISKCON splitting over this issue, it is not an option. Because by doing so, both sides would be committing Vaishnava Aparad to Srila Prabhupada and the Sampradaya. So just talk from leadership, from our senior devotees about forwarding this as a solution, in my opinion, should stop. It's not a solution to the problem. It's not an option. Splitting is not an option. However, having said that, if it comes to the point where various leaders promote and end up executing a split between ISKCON, I still think it is incumbent upon the GBC to follow this particular instruction. In other words, if ISKCON India, we know splitting hairs here, we all know what we're talking about. If certain members of the ICC think that ISKCON and execute a split of ISKCON India from ISKCON International, for lack of a better word, just even talking about this is distasteful. But say if, some leaders in ISKCON India engineer a split from international ISKCON, I still believe that the international GBC should still hold to the principle, validate and empower female Diksha gurus in ISKCON, hold to the principle, follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, and by the same token, always work to reunite ISKCON year after year. Do whatever it takes to reunite ISKCON, but also hold to the principle of Srila Prabhupada's instruction. Maybe it may take a generation or two, right? We look at examples of East Germany and West Germany. It may take a generation or two. It may take 50 years, 60, 70 years for generations to pass and for things to change in a society. And then there can be reunification. So I think, it's kind of like a fine line to walk, a very difficult needle to thread, that splitting is not an option, should never be entertained, certainly not by it should not be entertained by those of us who support following the instruction of Srila Prabhupada and having female Diksha gurus. So it should definitely never be an option forwarded by ISKCON's GBC, ISKCON's International GBC. Never, at any costs. Also, there should never be recapitulation on the issue of following this particular instruction of Srila Prabhupada. If certain members of the ICC want and engineer such a split, what can be done? It still should be incumbent upon the GBC and the rest of ISKCON to do whatever we can to ceaselessly endeavor for reunification at all costs and as soon as possible, even if it takes 50 years, without undermining Srila Prabhupada's instructions on female Diksha Guru issue. Continue to do whatever we can to work towards reunification if a split is engineered by leaders of ISKCON India. I don't think it'll come to that. And that brings me to the next point and of my pontification on this issue, and that is implementation. Implementation is key. Implementation really is the issue. Philosophically, from my point of view, there's no argument philosophically. It's done. The argument's over. Years ago when the GBC came out with this 2,000-page document on why female Diksha gurus is the future of ISKCON and why they were validating, not validating, why they were affirming and executing on Srila Prabhupada's instruction, this huge 2,000 page document. I read through it and it was, it was nice. I mean, it was to see all the different arguments. But the document is 3 pages. The cover, the resolution saying ISKCON will now, support and empower female Diksha gurus. And there's 2 reasons why. Because Srila Prabhupada wanted and repeatedly said, spoke, and wrote that his disciples should become gurus, number 1. Number 2, he never, ever described gender or sex being the reason why a person is disqualified from being a guru. Those are the 2 reasons. And third, Srila Prabhupada specifically said women can be gurus. Those are the 3 reasons why we, the GBC, hereby affirm and execute on this particular instruction. Page 3, references to those places where Srila Prabhupada said those things. That's the document. It's a 3-page document. As it pertains to the female Diksha Guru issue, nothing else matters except for what Srila Prabhupada said. But implementation is where there can be compromise. Implementation is where there can be sensitivity. Implementation is where there can be cooperation, where there can be understanding, where there can be empathy, where there can be humility. That's where the discussion begins, at implementation. Not at whether or not it should happen, at implementation. That's the discussion. But for now, let's chant some japa. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Bhakta Vrinda. All right, we will continue tomorrow. We'll go over implementation